start recording? Yeah.
So very good afternoon to you all.
Afternoon.
I shall be very brief in my presentation, and I will not read out anything from these slides, just make some brief comments and pass from one slide to the other. Now, in the life of every nation, there comes some defining moments. India is no exception. And the defining moment was in 1959, when television made its advent. Then came the watershed decade of the 90s, when the Indian economy was open to globalization, and that was the era of liberalization, when the Indian markets were open to global capitalism. And this decade was characterized by the proliferation of private channels, and there was a shrinkage of the importance of the state, and there was a parallel dominance of commercially driven private players. What is very significant is that even when the social media has established its overarching dominance, but the popularity of television has not dwindled even an iota. On the other hand, the audience still believes that it is the television news which is most accurate and trustworthy. Herein lies my question. Supposing if you believe someone from the core of your heart and you find that he or she betrays that trust, what will be your reaction? Will you rebel against it? Well, that is the question I will not answer right now. What is this TRP? This is just, apparently, it is just a device to ascertain the popularity of certain television channels. It is known as the people's meter. Here is how the calculation was made. Total target impression divided by the total target population multiplied by 100, and the obvious intention is to get more advertisements. It is apparently very innocuous, but in reality, I would call it pernicious. It is resulting in qualitative degradation, and I would be inclined to re-abbreviate this TRP as tendentious, rabble-rousing politics. Why? Because it is simply negating India's tradition of critical, rational debate and mediated public deliberation. Yesterday, Christian Vicari said that he hoped that this conference would be a dialogic conference. It is this dialogic tradition which is being smashed. And smashed by whom? Television anchors. That is why we now find that today the agenda from education, entertainment, information, communication and discussion, it has shifted to political propaganda, generation of excitement, and what we may call melodrama, unhinged histrionics, where all voices are sort of subdued, drowned into a sickening cacophony. That is what I would like to call, this is not my expression, but the expression of some experts, monarchy of anarchy of the anchors. Look at this gentleman. His name is Arnab Goswami. His Republic TV has gained phenomenal popularity. Now, when television had first made its appearance here, and in the initial years of liberalization, there were people like Prannoy Roy and his NDTV, but that was radically different. His style of functioning as an anchor was sober, suave, and civilized. He is an anachronism today. Just look at this Arnab Goswami pointing his index finger at the panelist, which means he's accusing him, isn't he? Is an anchor supposed to do this? Yesterday, when I chaired a session in this very room, I was asked to act just as a facilitator of discussion. If I had tried to do something like this, or if I had tried to shout at the top of my voice, trying to sort of, repress the voices of any other speaker here, I would have been kicked out. But there is nobody who can dare to think in terms of any action against the anchors. Domination, aggression, intimidation, and this contagion is spreading. It's a kind of a bellicose, jingoistic approach. As a result, the television programs, the studio debates are being transformed into a simulated battlefield. Even in a boxing bout, after the boxing is over, the boxers shake their hands. But here nobody shakes each other's hands. They bay for each other's blood. You'll be sorry to know that Rajiv Tyagi, a Congress leader, died of a heart attack immediately after a television program where he was simply humiliated like anything. Now, some of the anchors are saying that should we save our jobs or should we save journalism? It's an existential imperative for them. And actually, discussion is being crucified at the altar of altercation. And we find democracy being distorted, diluted. Dilution would be, I would say it would be an euphemism. Distracted, diluted, and destroyed. If I may use the phraseology of Chomsky and Herman, the manufactured consent. Actually, the anchors are motivated by a political agenda. They simply want to consolidate and bolster the narrative of the ruling party. And their agenda is the mobilization of public opinion through deliberate, motivated political indoctrination. So it is not a spontaneous consent. It's a very subtle way of obfuscating the truth. That is how things are turning out. I have also, look at this picture. How it is coming to blows. And a lady, look at this lady. Now, ladies are also now using their hands more than their throat. I don't blame them because such is the excitement generated that people just can't maintain their self-control anymore. You see, linguistic violence is sometimes more deadly than physical violence. It's almost like a replica of Thomas Hobbes' state of nature with incessant competition and hostility. It also generates high levels of adrenaline secretion. Though a psychiatrist told me that this doesn't mean this adrenaline secretion is something very natural, but it can create irritation. It can cause a section of the audience to relapse into depression, and the after effects can be very, very dangerous. And there's another very, very dangerous possibility. Sometimes it happens that the youthful segments of our population, after watching these ugly scenes on television screen, develop a sense of repugnance towards what's going on. But when they watch the same thing happening over and over again, what happens is that they consider that to be the normal way of things. And so then they get desensitized. That is very, very ominous. Look at these figures. The Republic TV is really topping the list. But look at the other channels. Look at Good News Today, India News. Maybe they are not at the topmost rung of the ladder, but have they lost their existence? Certainly not. So, here is the question which I would like to ask as to whether such aggressive, hostile anchoring is really conducive to the preservation of existence. So, how do we search for a panacea? You see, the Chief Justice of the Indian Supreme Court accuses television debates of pollution. It is not my words, but the words of the Chief Justice. And today, the opposition alliance, because the opposition is being deliberately suppressed. There is no free interaction of opinions. Arnab Goswami once crossed all limits of decency, and a foreign panelist then took him on and said, "Mr. Moderator, sir, am I here just to sit here and listen to your histrionics? Aren't you speaking in highly emotive language? Is this conducive to intellectual discussion of a high order?" This is how things are happening. So I have mentioned Habermas's idea of public sphere, Gerard House's idea of a discursive space. All these are being negated because the very public space is gradually shrinking. And that is undermining India's democracy. Would you believe 14 anchors have been boycotted by this opposition alliance, Indian National Development Inclusive Alliance, and they have sent letters of objection. The offended panelists have forwarded their letters of objection to these anchors. And at the end, towards the end of my presentation, I would also like to make a slight reference to Gadamer's hermeneutics. You see, the idea of conversation and interactive dialogue. But now the focus is shifting from conversation to confrontation. We have to make a choice. What should receive the topmost priority? Public interest or what interests the public? That is the subtle distinction one has to draw. Finally, you see, even when the news of the tragic death of somebody is telecast, the background music is so throbbing and pulsating, it appears as if the death of that person is being celebrated. I remember here a few lines, and as I'm nearing the end of my presentation. A few lines by Charles Wolfe, The Burial of Sir John Moore. Not a drum was heard, not a funeral note, as his corpse to the ramparts we hurried, not a soldier discharged the farewell shot over the grave of our hero we buried. Few and short were the words we said, and we spoke not a word of sorrow, but we steadfastly gazed at the face that was dead, and we bitterly thought of the morrow. So that is the way death should be, I would say, mourned or observed, not in this way. And music therapy is also being misappropriated. Now, so what is this leading us to? Will the anchors, if they continue this way, ultimately reach their graveyard? Can a boomerang effect be ruled out? Can quantity win over quality? If so, then how is it that BBC, CNN, and Indian channels like DD India, who have not compromised on the questions of quality, how is it that they are not facing any threat of existence? This is my counter argument. And there have been exemplary acts of protest by, say, Adidas, the Hondas, and Ford, who forced the Facebook to withdraw racist comments, saying that we will not provide any more advertisements. But the point is that ultimately, unless the entire collective consciousness of the people is aroused, I don't think any tangible benefits will be achieved. Now, two things for which, and I will end after this, that only it is the backlash of a disempowered audience. You see, the anchors are taking the decisions for them. The anchors are holding people guilty when the process of investigation is going on, arrogating to themselves the role of judge, jury, and executioner, all rolled into one. And the audience has subordinated its autonomy to the anchors. If they realize that they are being disempowered, will they not hit back? Now, this very morning, an idea came to my mind, the theory of relative deprivation. When a community feels that other communities have advanced or developed more, it is only when they place themselves on a comparative scale with other communities that they develop a rebellious instinct. Deprivation alone does not act as a catalyst for rebellion. It is relative deprivation. So if the Indian audience compares itself with the audience of other countries, say BBC and CNN, maybe they will develop a revulsion against the anchors. But a point has been raised recently that the anchors are doing what they are directed to do by their editors. Can they act independently? Whatever may be the reality, the fact remains that the audience, after all, public itself is a very volatile kind of a idea. You don't know what public is. But public mood always fluctuates. This moment they are enjoying. Next moment they may throw the anchors into the dustbin of history. So there is no, I would say that anchors are being lulled into a sense of complacency that just like Robert Browning's Pied Piper of Hamelin, the public will just react mechanically to the sensations generated by the bandmaster and dance to its tune. This may prove to be a utopian dream. So the graveyard may seem so far and yet be so near. Who knows? Thank you.